We're doing it. This is episode 510. Yes, No Laugh Track podcast here at Acme Comedy Company in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am Justin Severson, the host. Sitting across from me right now is Myq Kaplan, who I saw his show last night. It was fantastic. We're going to get into that. He was here just about a year ago and a year before that, and we are on a great streak of having Myq Kaplan here every 11 and a half, 12 months. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I always love coming back to do this podcast. And as a bonus, I'll do some fun comedy shows as well. But this podcast is what it's really all about. I love it here. This is really, truly one of the best clubs in the world. I love getting to be here as frequently as I am. And thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to get right into it here. Last night, set was incredible. We're going to talk about what you're working on right now. I want to compare it to what you were doing last year first.
Sure.
I listened back, like I normally do, I listened back to our conversation from last year. That was episode, for people keeping track at home, 467. Last August 2nd is when it was posted. In any case, at that time, I made a comment to you on the podcast where I pointed out that you were looking at notes throughout your whole set.
Yes.
And that you had been on stage for like 45 minutes at one point and hadn't even gone through like a page and a half. Now let's go to last night. And also last year, there was interactions with the crowd.
Yes.
Last night, 0 interactions with the crowd. 0 paper, no notes. It was just you coming out and going straight into the show. I loved it. But completely different.
Yes.
Because you're working on what right now?
Thank you for asking. This is the show that I did last night is basically the show that I'm bringing to the Edinburgh Fringe Fest in just a couple weeks. It starts beginning of August. And I'm there all August, pretty much, maybe 25, 26 days in a row. I will do this show that I think last night it was a little just over an hour. I have to get it down to just under. It has to be 55 minutes maximum. So I need to strip out a few extra things. But otherwise, it's generally, if I were there right now, I would do the show. I would talk a little faster, however much I could. But yeah, I've been working on the show for since before the pandemic.
Right.
And, I don't not only working on the show, but that's like the main hour of comedy that I've been, honing the most in recent years. And so the plan is to bring it to Edinburgh and then to return probably to the United States, where I generally live, and then record it as my next special / album / what have you.
Oh, you will?
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said 55 minutes.
That's the goal.
That's a hard rule there at that festival?
I believe that they have shows, kind of almost every hour, maybe every hour on the hour in different venues. So maybe they leave a little extra time to like get the audience out, get them back in. But they run a pretty tight ship because if every show goes over 5 minutes, then over the course of a 12-hour period, one show won't happen. But
the festival's now 2 months long.
Yes. Yeah. I think it would just make everyone, make the people who are working hard work harder and be madder. So that I'm gonna aim for what they ask for.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Have you done it before? You've been there before.
I was there one time in 2018. Actually, the album that I recorded here in 2019 was the conclusion of that process with I had brought that hour, the hour that became the album, AKA.
Yes.
I brought it in 2018, and it was called All Killing Aside when I was there. And then the pandemic began before we released, and we're like, let's call it something else. And let's put All Killing Aside, and we'll just like abbreviate it AKA. It'll be an AKA. There'll be a lot of extra bonus layers and meanings. But yeah, so that was a really fun and meaningful experience. My girlfriend came with, and that was actually the first time that she really started working with me on my comedy in a specific way, where like she watched the show, for weeks every night, and she would at first I feel like informally she would be like every once in a while like I noticed that you said this differently, on Tuesday from, the Monday before. And she would sometimes have like, meaningful, strong opinions, but she's like, I think this way, like, I like this way. And if it was like, well, it doesn't matter to me, then I'll do the way that you like, you know what I mean? And sometimes I wouldn't necessarily, so I'd be like, oh, I actually like doing it this way. And we'll sometimes have discussions about it. But now, like, whenever she's at a show, whenever I'm doing like the show that is like the main thing that I'm working on, or just in general, if she wants, she often just has a notepad, takes notes, and we will go over it kind of the next day. And she'll often just have new ideas that in the show that I'm doing now in particular, she is like, you know, a co-creator and like one of the main characters of and in the show. And so sometimes she will have ideas for, like, she's like, that part where you say that I say this thing, can you say it this way because that's the way that I say it and not that. And I'm actually the voice that I just gave her there is much harsher than her voice. She is a kind, sweet angel, and her voice is beautiful and melodious, and any harshness it is my own doing, and I mean to extract it. Truly, there are moments in the show where we've talked about, she'll be like, can you try to, like, think about when you're embodying me, you know, think about how you're embodying me, because I'm a, you know, just a galumphing oaf, you know, of, I'm like, this, that, you know, I'm like, I'll do it louder than her or faster or pointier, you know.
Isn't that funny when I'll like, get that from my wife and I'll be like, that's what I sound like to you? There's no way that's what I sound like to anybody else.
So she, in 2018, took some super valuable notes that the show became different and better, you know, because of her thoughtful feedback, especially because she's like, you know, other than me, she knows my work more than anyone, better than anyone. Super fans out there, except for you, obviously. But sincerely, like, she, you know, she loves me, and she like even before she knew me, she enjoyed my comedy. And so and we have like a real nice complementary relationship to each other, because we're different people. Obviously we share many things in common, but also there's many places where her different vantage point is valuable, because, you know, from the inside, you can't know yourself the same way as someone can from the outside. And so now we have both of the perspectives. It's, you know, do you ever see the movie The Negotiator with Samuel L. Jackson and I think Kevin Spacey long ago? Anyway, it was about two hostage negotiators, who were they were put at odds against each other. One of them, I don't want to spoil the whole thing. I will spoil as much as the preview spoiled for me.
Perfect.
Which is that at some point in it, while they were going up against each other, something happened, and then we see one of them on the phone talking to, I don't even know, but he's like, now you have to deal with both of us. And that's actually something that didn't even appear in the movie and happened way later and was kind of a spoiler, like, oh, I thought these guys were enemies. Now they're on the same side against some greater common enemy. Anyway, all I'm saying is that I used to do comedy. I've been doing comedy over 20 years. I still do. I used to do comedy. I still do, but I used to too. I used to steal jokes from Mitch Hedberg. Now okay. But
I was going to say.
Yeah, 100%. An homage.
Well done.
I used to love Mitch Hedberg. I still do, but I used to too. There we are. I post that on his birthday every year, and it feels good. So the point is, I used to do comedy only on my own. I write it, I perform it, I think it, I do it. And now, with Rini in my life, now you have to deal with both of us.
Couple things.
Yes.
Will you ever, I believe I saw her in the club last night when I went to use the restroom.
I think you're right.
I think I caught her recording, which, you know, you're not supposed to be recording in the club.
That's so.
And then I thought, okay, there must be an exception for someone special here, and clearly there was. Will you ever, and I've heard her voice on your podcast.
Yes.
Have you ever brought her up on stage?
What a great question. Thank you for asking. I have not yet, but I did the show in Los Angeles about a month ago, and my friend Erin Judge, who opened the show, she's a super funny comedian.
I just listened to her on your podcast.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, Erin, thank you for listening. You do a lot of research, and it is appreciated, and it shows. You're a hard worker.
Thank you.
Of a podcaster. It's hardly, what does it even mean? But yeah, Erin, one of my dearest, oldest friends in comedy, started in Boston together more than 20 years ago. And she's super funny and super smart. And she gave me a couple of notes afterwards, one of which was like, have you thought about bringing Rini on stage at the end for a bow, for a curtain call, for at least, or even in, I don't want to give away too much, but there's a part at the end that seems like we've actually discussed whether she might come on and, actually read a thing that is something that I read of hers.
Yes.
And
that would be interesting.
It would. We haven't tried that specifically yet, but it's in the works.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's
Okay.
definitely because, the show is in large part about her and co-created by her. It absolutely, if it were if it was a theater production, I surely at least would, as they gesture to, the tech people, the pit orchestra, the people who helped make this thing the thing that it is. Yeah.
I mean, I can picture it now. You go and hey, and you invite her out. The crowd gasps that she's coming out. I mean, I really can see that happening.
Yeah,
because they've been hearing about your relationship for nearly an hour, and then you bring her out.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I could
Thank
definitely,
you, Justin.
I could definitely see that happening.
It's happening tonight, whether she wants to or not. We'll definitely talk about it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Another thing that you have out there now since the last time we talked is a dry bar special.
That is so.
Yes. When did you record that?
Great. I recorded it before the last time we talked.
Okay.
So it's 2023 as we speak now. I was last here in 2022, and I recorded that dry bar special in September of 2021.
Okay.
It was, sort of the things had been opening up since vaccinations, post-lockdown. And that was really the first flight I took. I started, I think the first clubs I performed in, I drove to the Arlington Draft House in Virginia in June of 2021. We drove to Kansas City and here. I was here in 2021, July or August.
Yeah.
And we drove, from New York to here. I think it's probably like 20-ish hours. And we drove back with a bunch of stops along the way. And then, the dry bar specials are taped in Utah. I had a college booked in Utah, and so that's what sort of came together alignment-wise for the geographical. What am I saying? I had a gig there, so I booked another gig there.
Sure.
And that's what I'm saying. And so, yeah, the dry bar special happened. We flew out there. I think Rini almost, she got... it might have been like elevation sickness because Utah, where we were, is like they call Colorado the Mile High City. I think that where we were in Utah might have been even higher than that.
They don't brag
They call
about
Denver.
it,
Denver. Colorado's a state.
Right.
They call Colorado the Mile High City, and then people are like, "Do you mean Denver, the city in Colorado?" Yeah, absolutely. That's what they mean. That's what they get it wrong sometimes. That's why I'm just doing an impression of people getting things wrong pretty frequently. And but yeah, so we went to a hospital in Utah, which was the emergency room in Utah, like way easier to get into than the emergency room in New York City. Whenever we go, we've been to the emergency room in New York where we live a few times, and it might actually be faster to fly to Utah and go to one of their emergency rooms. Got in right away. The doctors were like, "This is COVID. For sure, we're going to be super surprised if it's not COVID. Every symptom that you have really seems like COVID." Did a test, came back, not COVID. Figured out, we're like, wow, this is great, because that was like maybe 2 days before the dry bar taping, and if she had it, probably who knows?
Sure.
But it turned out she ended up being okay. She rested. She got over whatever it was.
Utah sickness.
And yeah, Utah sickness indeed. And yeah, then did the dry bar taping. I think it was in Provo, Utah. September, and they were like, yeah, so we just we generally turn this around, and we'll send you a draft, kind of a rough version in maybe 3 months, maybe 3 to 6 months, and then they come out 9 months, 12, and then it was more than a year and a half later. I was like, I think it's real. I think it's gonna happen. But
yeah,
but
does that mess with anything with you? Like timing out your material being out there? Does it like? Just what you just said, like, well, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, and then it's 2 years later almost. Did that screw with things?
No, it didn't for this reason. Thank you for asking. Thank you for your care. So Dry Bar, as you know, I'm sure, just for the listener, Dry Bar is so named because so my understanding of it is it's in Utah. It is not explicitly affiliated with the Church of Latter-day Saints. Jesus Christ as well. I think he's in there as well. What about the Church of Latter-day Saints, but no Jesus, like Garfield minus Garfield? Yeah, the Mormons minus Jesus, and so that. The vibe of the Dry Bar specials is they are clean of a certain caliber to a greater degree than even like, TV clean. Like there's things you could do in a late night set on Conan, on Letterman that in Dry Bar, they'd be like, not for us, and like even things as, I feel like this is very noteworthy. They had guidelines. They had like a video you watch. So like these are the things to avoid in a Dry Bar special. Like obviously things like explicit drug references or sexual references. But even like a spouse talking negatively about their spouse in a certain way, they're like, that's our audience isn't a big fan of that. And I was like,
either sex?
I think so.
Any sex, I should say.
Yeah, thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of material about my wife, right? But so it didn't seem problematic for me at all to just, I went through, like Rini and I, to prepare for this. We on our drive back from here in 2021, we went through Chicago, and then I think from Chicago to home, we listened to the 5 albums that I had released up until that point, up through AKA. So it was from Vegan My Meld to AKA. Listened back to all of them and we're like, what jokes do I have that would fit the parameters of Dry Bar's, cleanliness? And of those 5 hours, I think we found like an hour of jokes that I'm like, I think this would be perfect for them. They only needed a half hour. So I sort of whittled it down from that. So it wasn't that I had recorded this special that was like brand new material that no one had ever seen anywhere, and I want to get it out there. Which I think is to your question. If that had been the case, then perhaps I would have felt like let's get it out there. I mean, here's the thing too. Almost every album and special that I've made has not come out immediately, which I felt has actually been a boon of a sort. Like when my first album, Vegan My Meld, recorded in 2009, came out about a year later. By that point, I had, I didn't have like a brand new hour, but I was like working on, like eventually by like 2012, I recorded the next album. By that point, I had like a couple new hours. And I was like, oh. And so I did like an album and then a special the next year, 2 different hours. And then just so that special too, like each one of those like was recorded in 2012, came out in 2013, recorded in 2013, came out in 2014, which kind of, it wasn't by design, but it was kind of like a bonus for me that like if people saw the special and came out to see me the next day, then they wouldn't see the exact same thing that they had just seen. So it gave me that lag time. The fact that, I think there are comedians who are recording specials and then they get released, the next month, maybe, who knows? And so I'm thankful that that hasn't been the demand by the producers, the studios. Like, there's been more on the other end, like will you put this out? We'll get to it. Yeah, eventually. A year. Give us a year and a half, whatever you got. I'm like, okay, well, I'll keep working on the next, Sure. And so I'm happy to have, multiple hours sort of, in rotation. Like for right now, like this one that I did last night. I'm happy that I didn't have to record the special last night, but if that was the special, that could have been the special. You know what I mean? And the more that I keep doing it, the more it keeps growing and the more I keep honing in on, the ideal version of it. But yeah, so the Dry Bar special is more like it's like my cleanest hits, my greatest cleanest hits. So there's this Todd Barry joke I like. I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, in box sets, it's like, who are those for? It's like the person who's like, I've never listened to anything by Steely Dan. I think it's time I listen to everything by Steely Dan. And so here's the thing is, obviously, if you're a super fan of mine, if you've listened to every comedy album that I've put out immediately when I put it out, then if you watch the Dry Bar special, there will be probably some familiar jokes, a lot of familiar jokes, though there are some new moments, some different, I realized, like, because I've never did, jokes that are in a 2014 production that I didn't do at the same time as some of the jokes from the 2010 release.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, oh, these actually, like, there's like a callback from, like, that's like a 4-year leap. That I'm like, oh, that's a fun thing that I discovered in the moment. So if you don't mind hearing a couple of the same jokes, you might get 2 bonus extra moments. if you're a completist, you gotta have all the moments. Then check out the Dry Bar special. But yeah, I'm just thrilled that it exists and that there are now so many more people who hadn't seen any of my work, aren't familiar with me at all, that now get this new inroad, this new gateway to me.
And I saw, because you replied to my comment on one of them, that you read some of the comments that people leave.
I do.
Which is a risky move, Myq, right?
I am delusionally self-confident. It can be risky. You know what? Here's a process that I recommend that. I'm going to make a new connection that I had never thought of before. So I'm going to bring us back to Erin Judge, my friend, who one time years ago, she asked me if I would write her bio. She gave me all the information that she wanted in it, and I was like, what a cool idea. Because she's like, it's hard to big up yourself. It feels like not humble. It feels weird to be like, me, right? Here's what's good about me.
Right.
But to do it for someone else, to ask someone that cares about you, that loves you, that wants to say nice things about you, I was like, that's what a fun idea. So I was happy to write hers, and I think she wrote one for me in exchange. And the reason that I bring this up now is I have some other friends who, when they release a new video, every once in a while they're like, I don't want to look at the comments, but I will look at the comments for them. And I'm 1 degree removed from them. So I look at them for them. And then I'll edit out any of the ones that I think they wouldn't want to see. And I'll be like, or if I'm like, hey, they're all good, you can look, or hey, here's one and here's one and here's one. And seen through the filter of a loving editor friend. So I say that all to say, I didn't do that, but if I wanted to, if there were too many that were like, ooh, no thank you, then I would ask somebody else. I would deputize a friend to be like, can you look at these and tell me about the good ones?
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I raw dogged it this time. Raw dogging online comments.
Yeah, okay, I want to ask you specifically about ones that like this one specifically.
Please.
It's because it starts off sounding like an insult.
Uh-huh.
It started out slow, but went great after about a minute. This guy is hilarious and profound. Okay, so it kind of starts off, and then your reply is fantastic. This comment started slow, but got great after about a second. This commenter is kind and super appreciated. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful reply.
Thank you.
But I mean, it starts off as kind of an insult.
People don't know how to be sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all working on it. We're all doing our best in ways. I think that especially in comedy, because there are these various subgenres of comedy, like roast comedy and comedy, that insult comedy. And when done by, sort of in consensual environments, when you do a roast, hopefully you're there because you care about the person being roasted. You're invited because you have skills as a comedian, and everybody's agreeing. We're all going to use our skills to say mean things that are funny, that are hopefully funnier than they are. They're funny enough that it undercuts how mean they are. To hear Pete Holmes laugh in the way that he does when somebody somebody who knows him points out something that could be wounding about him. He'll say, ah!
Yes.
The pained laugh that is such a bittersweet, a beautiful thing. And so that all exists in the realm of comedy when comedians are friends and comrades and in this together. And then people from the outside see that and they're like, I'll do it. You're bad. You're mean. You're stupid. Am I doing it? It's like, you are not quite doing it. Here's the thing. I'm not always quite doing it as well. This is a joke that I don't do. I'm sort of in the works, but the very idea is that I started out in Boston. It's a small, cohesive comedy community. We had softball teams and we had people would play Texas Hold'em. tournaments, after shows. It was just like a really tight-knit community. And within that community, there were your ball busters, your ovary busters, your various, gonad busters of whatever gender, and, your butt busters, your ghost busters, your dust busters, all kinds of busters, which is also known as a scrub. And technically speaking,
well done.
if you know the vernacular.
Well
done. Just trying to offer people some TLC, And so that's not where I came from in comedy or in life.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate to have lived a sheltered life. And even in comedy, I guess when I started, there was this web forum, like kind of before Reddit, before Facebook groups. The Comedy Studio, the club that I started at, was they had the Comedy Studio kvetch board, they called it. It was just like this online forum, and you could post shows, and you could, post comedy news, and just different, and just messing around, just like people having fun. And then people sometimes had like, anonymous, like they had names that they made up, and so you didn't know who everybody was. And there was kind of like a razzing, a hazing of like, it seemed like the people who were all longtime members of the community, they knew each other, they busted on each other, and if you joined, you might be like, oh, people are kind of being mean. But eventually you're like, oh, this is just kind of the way things are. But then eventually I was like, oh, I guess I've been kind of trained to be mean. Like it's in comedy, it is valuable to develop a thick skin. Like you're going to be on stage in front of audiences who probably like don't always love every single thing that you're going to say. So it is important. And I feel like maybe that was the motivation, to be generous by like the more experienced comedians being like, you got to learn how to take it.
Yeah.
When maybe it's like, maybe you just should have learned how to go to therapy, but or some combination thereof. But so that in the beginning, I was like, well, I'm just doing what other people are doing. And until I had a friend who was like, we always make fun of this guy, right? And he's like, could you stop? And I was like, oh, I guess, I want to make my friend feel good, not bad. And so, but that was the thing is I was like striving to model myself after. I was like, I want to be a member of the community. I want to play like everyone's playing. But I would find myself, and this is like the joke version of it, but it wouldn't be too different than this. People are, be like, your shoes are dumb. Hey, you look at your face. You didn't get enough sleep last night. And then I would jump in wrong. I'd be like, and you're sad because your dad left, right? Is that? And they're like, that's not what we're doing. We're not. No. Is it? Oh, we're not actually. They're like, not exactly like the middle path in Buddhism. You know what I mean? Don't go the full way in either direction.
Hilarious. I got one more I want to point out here. Let's see here. I got logged out of my phone here. This one I like because he's basically using part of your act, you could say. This guy was pretty funny. Or was he?
Oh, yeah. That's for sure. That would be a weird thing if that guy didn't like the joke that he is referencing. 100%.
Yeah. That's a great one. Referencing your joke to compliment you.
Fantastic. Yeah. They're like, not only did I see what you did there, I did what you did there. Yeah.
That's great.
I did what you did there. Yeah. So
when's that saying going to catch on? I did what you did there.
We're starting it right here, right now. I truly, I'm so grateful that there are people who, number one, watch what I do. Number two, like what I do. Number three, even thumbs it up. And then beyond that, to put a positive comment, I feel like you could look at videos online that have millions of views and, hundreds, thousands of likes, variously. And then you could look and they could still have a disproportionately negative set of comments in the comments. And that's, I think, because the people who like it are less likely, they're just I'm having a good time, living my life. I like this thing. Click, and goodbye.
Yep.
On to my next
I think you're right.
enjoyable activity. Yeah. Where somebody else is like, I need to Yelp,
I need to let you know what I didn't like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So I do my best to keep that in mind and try to be tender. I joined Threads recently.
Yes.
And, finally, another place to put all the same things I'm putting elsewhere. But there was somebody who wrote back to one of my threads. Like, I put a silly joke. I say it on stage sometimes because I have this one poster from when I performed at this club, Bananas in New Jersey. And I'm in the poster. It's just like a cartoon of me with a banana as a phone, which I think is a funny, a classic, a comedy classic. The banana's a phone. And so, look, a joke. I thought of it years ago. I tweeted it at some point, and I'm like, oh, I'll put it on Threads, and it's basically a fun thing you can do is take a whole bunch of bananas, put it up to your ear, and say conference call. And look, I'm not saying it's the best joke that I've ever written. I'm saying it's the second best joke I've ever written. No, I think it's just a fun, silly thing. Yeah. And so somebody wrote back a thing that was like disproportionately like it was just mean, and he was like, and here's the thing, if somebody says something rude or inconsiderate on social media, I used to argue with them forever. Now I'll give them one chance. I'll be like, the equivalent of like, hello, I'm a human being, and if they double down and don't engage in good faith and don't respond, like I'm a human being, then I'll be like, oh, well, I'm going to stop responding. And this one, I got to the point where I'm going to block. I'm going to block this person because they were, reading into things that and they were, ultimately, it turned out, they didn't care about that joke. They were like, I used to be a fan of yours. And now, ever since I learned that you're an ally to, and then they, basically, they said some transphobic things, and they're unhappy that I don't also say transphobic things. Yeah. And so I would, things like, people get to deter, like I say things like, I know what my experience is like. You know what your experience is like. So I trust everybody pretty much to know what their own experience is like, regarding, gender identity, regarding sexuality, regarding, like, I don't know you. You know you better than I know you. And that's basically all I'm saying. I'm not telling anyone how to live their lives in this way. But this guy was like, he wanted me to be different than I was, but I am not different than I am. I am same as I am. And look, I mean, it would have been... Here's the thing, a thing I have in common with it, I wish that person were slightly different than he was, but now the way that he is, the way that I could grant my wish of him being different than he was to no longer have him, he used to identify as guy who could message me, and now I identify him as guy who can't message me on this particular web platform anymore.
I wonder, Threads has been out for a week and a half and already getting blocked. I mean, that's impressive. Really?
I mean, I think, here's the thing. I just posted my next post as like, trans women are women, trans men are men. And if you feel free to block or unfollow or,
I saw that one. Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, that's good. And thank you for continuing to see.
I just moved on with my life because it didn't upset me. Imagine that.
It's so fascinating because, I mean, I consider myself a recovering argumentaholic, and I do my best to, like, I think there are times when it is important to speak up and, make your case known and, defend people who need defending. And sometimes, like, I mean, what's that old, I don't know if it's a meme or a cartoon or whatever, somebody's like, I can't go to bed because somewhere on the internet, someone is wrong. So somewhere there's someone being wrong on the internet. And like, I understand that. I have been in places where I'm like, but I can help. I can fix it. I can do it. And again, I think it's another middle path kind of situation where it's not that I can't do everything, but I also won't do nothing, like I'll put the energy to use as well as I can. If somebody is transphobic at me, I'll donate to, a cause that I think supports what I care about and that they would potentially be unhappy about,
Nice.
Not just to me. I want everyone to be happy. I don't know if I've mentioned this. It's maybe I tell this story every year on the dot, but my friend Gus is a practicing Buddhist and a DBT therapist, dialectical behavioral therapy, and he is a great listener, a kind human being, a thoughtful and wise person. He would not say that he is wise. Whenever I say, that's wise, Gus, he's like, look, that's just, I learned that from somebody else, and I'm just like the transmitter, like I'm just like, there's like a source of water over there there, and I'm the hose, and here, just getting that wisdom water from over there to over here. I'm like, Gus, that's a very wise analogy. He's like, yeah. But one time, Gus told me that a politician had died. I don't know which one, but he hadn't heard of them. But someone told him this politician died, and Gus responded as sort of a natural human response. He was like, "Oh, that's too bad." And then this person told him, actually, the person that died was homophobic and racist and sexist, so maybe it's not too. And then Gus is like, "Oh, it's too bad then that they died before they got to see the error of their ways and could repent and atone and make meaningful amends and do constructive work moving forward." Paraphrasing, but that was his legitimate, like, that's a trained Buddhist response, perhaps. Not to say that Buddhists are superhuman in any way. They are potentially, hopefully, hardworking humans at bringing more love and joy into the world and helping decrease the amount of suffering. In fact, one time Gus told me he's like, "I'm kind of frustrated about something." I'm like, "Frustrated? But aren't you a Buddhist?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm a Buddhist, not the Buddha." I'm like, "Ooh, you got me." Okay, so that I feel like that is my goal. I mean, we all are human beings. My goal is to see all human beings as human beings. We are all sentient beings, like in the Buddhist paradigm, and I think that this is correct. We are all striving to increase happiness and decrease suffering, at least for ourselves, at least for perhaps then out of that, your family, perhaps your in groups variously, your country, your community, hopefully, I don't hope that aliens attack some year in the future or day or tomorrow or right now. But if I don't hope that aliens attack, but if they do, I do feel like there will be potentially a world unifying event, like as we saw in the documentary Independence Day, where I do sometimes tear up when President Bill Pullman, my favorite president, he's one of my faves. I have a couple faves, but when he says this will be the world's Independence Day, because everybody comes together, and it's sort of like, here's another joke of mine that I haven't really put it in the act yet, but it's somewhere. I've tweeted it. Put it on Threads, probably. Put it anywhere you can see it, except in my act. But it's gonna get there somewhere. But the idea that Jesus said, "Love thy neighbor," and then there are some politicians that are like, "Okay, let's get to work on gerrymandering this neighborhood so that we don't have to love everyone." Right. Yeah, we'll love our neighbors, okay? But obviously, the meaning behind "love thy neighbor" is like love thy neighbor and everyone is thy neighbor. Like the Dalai Lama, I think, said, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." And so, in Buddhism, they do recognize, the teachings offer that when you're starting out, like, you might not be able to love like a bodhisattva, which is, sort of a Buddha-like being that continues even though they have, realized these certain realizations in life. They stick around to help other people have those realizations and eliminate suffering and increase happiness as well. And they say that a bodhisattva loves every sentient being the same way that a loving mother loves their child. And they're like, and you might not be there immediately, you might not be immediately able. So they're like, look, you could start with someone that you love as unconditionally as possible. It could be a pet, could be, an animal, a cute animal, could be someone in your family, someone like that. Start, and you can be like, wish them happiness, wish them an end of suffering, wish them. And then why not beyond that beloved group of people? Why not? How about some neutral people? You like the person at the bodega, the various people you come across in your life that you see once and never see again, and you don't know them at all. But like
the trucker that honked at me 90 times last night because he thought I cut him off, but it was his fault.
100%. Well, I don't know if that's a neutral category right now. But yeah, first the neutral. That guy, if he hadn't done all the other truckers that aren't cutting you off, all the other truckers or that you aren't cutting off, all the other truckers that aren't honking at you, all the people that aren't honking at you, the people. I mean, whether that's neutral for you or positive. So you start with positive, neutral, and then eventually, next level, they'll be like, also, like, send love to the people who look, that guy's honking at you for a reason, and it's not you. It's not only you. It's, you know, it's everything else that happened in his day, in his life, in his childhood. If you want to go back to lives before this one, you don't have to. Probably there's enough in this life that led to him honking at you. And like, who among us hasn't at least wanted to honk at someone? People honk, and it makes me want to honk at them, but I do my best. I just honk at them in my head, and I'm like, why are they doing that? Why? It's not helping. It's not helping anyone. Is this helping anyone? Is this helping me? A little bit. I hope so. But so yeah, and the goal ultimately is to expand the neighborhood of care to make everyone, you know, I feel like it's a thing that most faith traditions have in common, is that at the core of it, it's about, you know, love, compassion, forgiveness, everyone that you can, starting from where you are.
When you come back next year, I'm going to bring a game show. I need to start working on it as soon as possible. It's going to be quotes, and it's going to be multiple choice.
Yes.
Jesus, Dalai Lama, or Gus.
Ha ha ha! I like that a lot. And also, I'll tell you, here's a funny thing. I did years ago, I don't know who this was or where it was. I feel like it was an office in New York City somewhere. And it was like a comedy podcast, radio show, game show, something. Don't know what it was. The only relevant details is that I remember one of the games that was offered was figure out whose quote it was. And it was either Dalai Lama or Dolly Parton.
Oh,
and
seriously?
It really was. And here's the thing. At the time, like that was before I familiarized myself with the life and work of Dolly Parton as much as I have, and realized that she is, you know, as close to a literal walking angel on this planet. Like, I truly, at the time, like, it's so weird that Dolly Parton, when I was a kid, really the only thing I knew about her was the size of her breasts was big, because there were stupid jokes about it that she also, like, you know, leans into, and like, you know, she's like a judo master, or like she's like a Tai Chi expert of like, look, if people are gonna make fun of me, like, then I'll be in on it as well. Like, but it's foolish, and I'm sorry to even raise that, but she is such a, you know, here I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say it into my recorder as well, because I think this is gonna be a joke that I will share, perhaps on Threads, perhaps on stage, who knows.
Here we go.
But I think perhaps the reason that Dolly Parton, that her chest is like the focal point of so many people's attention, and its size, is because I think she has the largest heart in the world. That she truly, like, every story that I see about her, like, she, you know, contributed, like, she was involved in the vaccinations. Like, she had a hand in one of the companies that helped people stop dying and getting sick. She had a hand in creating Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like a company that she was either part owner in or what have you. Like, I mean, obviously we all know she wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You in a single day. Like, that it's so beautiful. Like, the Dolly Parton's America podcast is fantastic. And so but at this point, I was just like, oh, she's just a lady that people make jokes about. And so I was like, oh, isn't that kind of weird that Dalai Lama on one side, Dolly Parton on the other side. And now I'm like, there's one side. There's no two. Like, I'm saying, whoever that was, I think it was a well-intentioned game, but clearly they didn't know as much about, if you knew enough about Dolly Parton to know that she's not that different from the Dalai Lama.
Amazing.
Like, just be like, which one said it? I don't know. They're both very wise.
Amazing. Wow. You never cease to amaze me, Myq.
Thank you, Justin.
You're such a deep thinker and so good with words and so funny.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this once again.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh my God.
We gotta let people get on with their lives and do other things. We can't take up all their time, audio and video wise. People should follow you on social media. If they still have a chance, come see you at Acme. You're going to be doing shows at that festival with the name in Scotland I can't pronounce because
Edinburgh
it ends in
Fringe
GH.
Fest. Yeah.
It looks like Edinburgh.
It sure does. Absolutely.
And I have a hard time saying that. So congrats on that. I really hope that goes well for you. A final thing that we didn't, let's just give this like 30 seconds. You, Heart, Brain, Art, Train.
Yes.
What is that?
Thank you for asking. It is the new book, as of like the past month, that is a collaboration between me and my dear friend Ramin Nazer, who, if nothing else, follow him on all of the social media. His art, he is a visual artist, among other things. His art is beautiful. Like, if you like the things that I say and talk about, like he is like, we're not the same person, but there's an overlap of what interests us. There are beautiful, colorful, rainbow-filled, psychedelic, like philosophical pieces of art that he creates on his own. And then also, several years ago, I asked him if he would like to collaborate, and he has illustrated 75 or 80 of my jokes, thoughts, ideas that I thought would lend themselves well to his style. And so Heartbrain Art Train is that book. It is available when I'm doing shows, and it is also on my website, myqkaplan.com, spelled my weird way, MyQ Kaplan, and Ramin Nazer, RAMINNAZER.com as well. So feel free to order that book or get it from me if you see me.
You are so loyal to your friends, and his name gets mentioned nearly every time you're here. And I think that that's just awesome. So I wanted to give that some attention because I've been following him for a while now. I recognize, anytime I see his art, I recognize it immediately. Very cool.
Thank you.
People should pick that up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's do this again next year.
I would love to.
Thank you.